You're muted, Michelle.
Oh, good. I was just talking to myself. That's wonderful. I asked if this was like a no camera kind of meeting.
Usually we have cameras on, but they're optional.
And I
Did
thought
you
I
want
had
to?
Radu into turning his camera on, which I did.
You got me too, so.
I'm at the gym today.
Exemplary, taking care of your health. Amazing.
How you doing, folks? Happy New Year! Why don't we get this until 5 past the hour and get kicked off? Okay. So, hey, welcome everybody. This is January 7th, 2025. This is our first meeting of the Wasm Working Group in 2025. So thank you all for attending. We are a subgroup within Container D and TAG Runtime. And we follow the code of conduct for the CNCF. So generally, that just means be nice to each other. If anybody is talking, please don't talk over them. Please raise your hand. You will be recognized. And we have a pretty good group in here today, and several agenda items, which the most important one, of course, is Happy New Year to everyone here. So great, and I wish everyone an auspicious 2025. It'll be a great year. Uh, cool. Anybody interested in sharing the meeting? If not, I would be glad to do that if anybody does not want to.
I just don't know who did it last, David. I mean, I can do it if you did it last. It's been a break.
I can't remember. It's been like 3 weeks. My mind's not there. So, and just got back yesterday. So
Okay, well, I got back a little bit earlier than that. So if you want a break, I can do it. I'm fine running it.
if you'd like to, anybody else want to take notes? I will volunteer for notes. Sailor, take it away.
Okay. You already got the intro, which is the worst part to remember. So there we go. Welcome everyone. Okay, so we have a couple different agenda items today to go through. Thanks for people who dropped those on ahead of time. It was really great. And let's see. First off, we have the discussing the spin, and David's name is in the way. Spin and SpinKube CNCF Sandbox recommendation document. Don't worry, David. That wasn't actually you. It was Google Docs. Okay, so Kate, you had that on there. You want to go ahead and bring that up?
Sure. So essentially yesterday, there was a spin has been submitted to the CNCF as a sandbox project. That's a project that supports running serverless WebAssembly, and then SpinKube was another project that was submitted that brings spin to Kubernetes. And it is up for sandbox review next week. And Ricardo, one of the runtime tag co-leads, put a comment on Spin's assessment issue, GitHub issue, linking a document that was stated to be the assessment of Spin for a recommendation for Sandbox by the Wasm Working Group community and leads and the runtime tag lead. Yeah, Radu linked the issue, and it's the last comment there. And after looking a little bit at the document as a maintainer of Spin and finding, at first I found that a lot of the comments didn't seem to align with what I saw Spin's missions was, and then noted that several of the Wasm Working Group leads did not participate in that project, and a lot of the Wasm Working Group members did not. So I wanted to bring it up because it seems to be a misrepresentation of the Wasm Working Group's opinion, and I think we should discuss what the opinion of that group is and what people's thoughts are on that document.
Yeah, so I did do some digging into this, Kate, when I saw the stuff pop up. I had added a comment on one thing beforehand on some of the text here, and somehow that got attributed to all of the Wasm Working Group, which was not the intention. I did go and try to, which is good because also Bob went and did this. Last night I went and dug through all the different things to see where they were coming from, and kind of collate that all together. I think the biggest concerns from just like when I read through it again and tried to track down some of the stuff was, and one of them Bob has answered further, which I'm really glad, because I think one of them was around the tight coupling in the documentation and in things to Fermion itself. And having I know that when I saw that again when I was reading through this, like having been through the incubation process, like we had a single reference in there to like an open source project that we had from Cosmotic, and they were like, no. And I was like, whoa, okay. I think that's where that one was coming from, but also just the fact of the perception around that, just because it did show so much there. Now, to be clear, this is just as me reading through and going and trying to dig stuff in. I know you guys aren't going to do that. Like I've been working with you guys for years. I know what the intent is. I think that might just be some of the perception with how much is there. And Bob clarified, like that's totally normal. We can move that through. So I don't think that's as big of an issue, if I'm being perfectly honest, now that I'm looking through all this. But that was the first thing that I saw there. I dug through some more, but I'll pause in between each of these.
Yeah, I think there are two discussions to have here. The one that I want to focus on first, so not what you're pointing out, is the fact that the document was titled as being a representation of the Wasm Working Group and of the working group leads. And so I want to first talk about that. Then we can talk about the content of it is, if that's okay, for this agenda item, then move to the content. But can we first start off with who the document, like how it was represented as being from this working group, and dig a little bit more into that. And I'd love to hear your thoughts too, David, and on that as well.
Yeah, like I said, Kate, I think I haven't had a chance to go confirm back with Ricardo on this, but I think where that was coming from was the fact, like I literally on one part of the text, someone had asked me, I think, to fact check something, and I don't know if that's what made them add that in. I think the original document said like Wasm Working Group community members, not leads. When I did look at it, it did say both. Okay,
community member and leads.
Because okay, and maybe they had changed it by the time I read it. But anyway, if I were to take a stab, that's where it came from. But I'll honestly, I need to talk to Ricardo and just ask how that was done, because I didn't like when I did offer a fact check because someone was asking me. I did not like say like this is the. I just went and tried to find the documents. It was actually, I think, the links to the old comments. And And so like that's the kind of thing that like I just need to ask Ricardo and figure it out. I don't think the intent was necessarily to do that. I think he just asked various people in the Wasm community. And so I think that's just might have been what had happened. We want to make sure that it comes like, and that's why I'm glad we're talking about it today. I want to make sure it comes from this group when we're doing it all together. So I have to track that down with Ricardo, to be perfectly honest, and see why it was called that. But like I said, like I offered one thing on one part of the text that I was shown, but that was it. So I don't know if that's what gave it or not. David, did you have anything? Oh yeah, sorry, you're writing.
Uh, I don't really have much to add there other than the first time I saw the document was yesterday when it was linked. So yeah, I can understand that from some perspective. I suppose, being a maintainer of one of the project or being a maintainer or contributor to projects in that space, perhaps maybe by bias, my bias would be represented in the analysis, and that may be inappropriate. However, I don't know. It would have been. I think it would have been nice to know that the document was going around. If there was any points of view to be shared or any help that I could have provided, that would have been nice. That's all I got, I think.
I mean, I think what we can do, David, is roll this back up to Ricardo, um, and then um, and talk from there. I do know that the CNCF's been trying to make sure all the processes have been followed, and maybe this is just part of that, just making sure that those processes are followed. Like I want to be clear, like I haven't heard anything from anyone who's like, no, we don't want spin here. That's not what I've heard when I was trying to like gather around. I think people were just trying to make sure the processes were followed. So let me just talk to him and see what happened, because I don't think there was malintent here. I just think there might have been some slip ups. Radu?
Thanks. Thanks for that. It would be good to clear that up because as it stands right now, it appears that as the document was originally written and linked in the CNCF sandbox application for Spin, the recommendation of TAG Runtime and the Wasm Working Group is for Spin not to be accepted as a sandbox project. And so it is a process question for sure, but I think the currently publicly linked statement for the project is that it should not be accepted as a CNCF project because of following concerns. And it would be great to clearly state whether that's the recommendation of the Wasm Working Group or not, and where that all came from.
David?
I thought I remember reviewing the spin analysis, and the spin analysis, the final conclusion was that it should be a sandbox project. It was in the SpinKube analysis at the end, is that it wasn't ready to be a sandbox project until certain things were the technical analysis items were you know handled. Is that incorrect?
I I thought I went back and reread that yesterday. Apparently, I've been reading too much. Um, I read that yesterday. I thought it was still recommended. There was just some of those technical concerns noted, but that's a pretty normal part of the process. Like when I looked at the conclusion, it said um, the the thing there, like that was at the
The
yeah.
second line of the document says, we have determined that there are strong concerns against the CNCF inclusion at this time for both projects. That's the second line of the document.
No, I'm talking about, sorry, the David, are you referring to the one for the spin cube itself, right? Or are you referring to this one? Because this one doesn't say, well, like you said, it doesn't say, but I'm talking about the spin cube one before.
That was the SpinKube review that was linked. Date August 6th.
Okay,
Of
yeah, so it was the
2024.
one from the one from earlier, I think says like it recommends it. Um Yeah, where was that? There it is. Yeah, that's the link. Thank you. That one I think says recommend, right, David? Like, let me pull it up. Yeah, that one says yes on that one. Um, Joe?
Oh, I just want to raise a point where I think the wording in the Spin and SpinKube analysis document is a bit confusing because it tries to say, it tries to reach a conclusion for both projects. Because if you read that document, it says assessment of Spin and after reviewing Spin and its accompanying SpinKube, we have determined that there are strong concerns against the sandbox inclusion at this time. Is it just referring to SpinKube or is it referring to like both projects?
Sorry, let me go back. I'm just looking at my notes here from reading through this. I think just reading through all the notes too, and like Bob Killen's notes on here, I think that, and this is how I read it. When I read through it all yesterday, the thing I took from this was just the concerns around um the fermion tie-ins, I think, based on what I was able to gather. And then the other thing was the having Spin and SpinKube be two separate projects. I think that's what this boils down to based on all the stuff I was digging through. I don't think it's saying, I think that the wording should have been different here too, which I will once again bring up with Ricardo. But like, yeah, I think what we need to do is come through as the Wasm Working Group and say what the issue is here. I think that'd just be better. We discuss that, we send that to Ricardo, and then let Ricardo fold it in. And just maybe delete the old link to the old doc, delete the link to the old document, and then take the stuff we talk about today. Maybe that would just be the easier thing to do here. I don't know. David, thoughts?
I mean, I think that seems reasonable. I think there are some reasonable analysis in there of things of concern. And the notes, I think as folks have started to put notes in there, that raises those issues like, hey, is this really, does this really fall under the same auspice as we're embedding different plugins, different cloud providers into Kubernetes core and using operators for that, or as opposed to like the plugin for the runtime. Also, how the runtime class manager works. Some folks may not love the security needs, the RBAC needs of what it does. However, I think the wording around like that it wouldn't fit cloud providers or something like that seems a little bit misplaced. I think there are fair. I think it's fair to be critical on both sides of this. And, that just means that we need to discuss. James?
Yeah, one action item I think I'm taking away from this was I'd like to make sure that I don't know what the process is, but it sounds like several people in the working group who show up regularly didn't see this document. And it sounds like I think that should be something that should be improved for the process. Is it should be shared through those channels so that they can be reviewed. It feels like some sort of feedback we can give back up to TAG Runtime and generically. I saw one of the other documents, the first one that we were talking about there, the one that came out in October.
Radu?
As someone not familiar with the TAG Working Group recommendation to this DOC process, is the expectation that the Wasm Working Group would give a recommendation for the project to the TAG?
Yeah, that's why I put that in the chat. I think that's the proper format. Is that it's supposed to go like what probably should have happened is it should have come to this first. And then like it probably should have been queued up for this meeting, then we could have talked about it and then sent it back. Like, and I think either way it could work. It can be, I've seen both happen where we've had like a solicitation of like, hey, give us feedback on this. And then other times where they've said, what do you think of this? And I think either one is the proper way to do it. So I think that's what we bring up to Ricardo. And just bring that up that way.
So taking being explicit about this, then the Wasm Working Group did not have a recommendation to the TAG for the Spin project. Just want to make that
yeah, to be very clear, there was no official recommendation for that. Like I said, I think that got attached because I reviewed one piece of the text at some point. I don't think that it was, and I didn't say like, and I think I did that as a favor. I didn't say like this is the Wasm Working Group recommendation. So that's why I want to track this down as well because that was not any intent. I think it needed to come here. So I think that's probably what we need to go bring up with Ricardo. Okay. So pausing there, that answers hopefully that answers that first question. Like there was no like official recommendation there. So continuing on from that, do we want to have the conversation now and fill out new document for it? Because the sandbox review is this week, right? So we don't want to miss that. Correct?
It's next Tuesday, I believe.
Next Tuesday. Okay. So even then, like that'd be a little bit okay. So we probably want to get this done. Does that sound like something we can do now? Maybe just document fresh in the notes and then compile the notes into something instead. Would that work since we're all here?
Just to clarify, are we making a recommendation document, a response document? What are we doing?
I think we do go for the recommendation document. I think so. Like, I think David and I can go talk to Ricardo. I already had a meeting with Ricardo soon anyway, talk about other stuff, tag runtime related. So I can always just fold it into there if I need to. But like, I think we bring that up with the feedback through there, and then I think we just turn this into a new recommendation and we send that back to Ricardo and say, okay, like let's fold this together, whether that's new document or completely editing this one. We can do either way. But I think we try to provide a recommendation back. So recommendation doc. Danielle?
I would be a bit concerned about just kind of ignoring and replacing that doc as it is written. And I think we need some kind of statement on what it is because it was badly presented in the first place. And I'm uncomfortable having my name associated with something that I didn't know existed.
Yeah. Did you see that they changed it to community members and then I can go talk to Ricardo too when we do that? Or do you want to like have a response, Danielle?
I want Ricardo to update his comment on GitHub.
Okay.
Because like it's a very anonymous doc that was given a lot of weight without the input of people whose weight was thrown behind it.
Okay. I'll make sure we do that too then. I'll follow up with Ricardo like literally right after this meeting. Just to make sure we get that fixed. It does look like he edited it somewhat, Danielle. So if you do get a chance, can you check that comment? I just saw that he changed. I pulled it up just to see. He said TAG Runtime facilitated a doc with an assessment recommendation. I just want to make sure we handle this right for you. Okay. Okay. Should we move on to getting through the recommendation side of things? And I think we just start fresh and taking notes if we do this, just so we have a fresh recommendation to give. Any thoughts?
I just want to make one more comment in that
Mhm.
the doc as it currently is, the history is scrubbed up to a certain point. So I just want to like point that out. Just that like you can't see anything before yesterday afternoon. So just if people are using that as a source of truth, just that there is more that edits that were before that, namely the author line was different before that time. So I would just want to point that out.
I do know that one, having talked to Ricardo over Slack. I think it was just he had been amalgamating sources. And then the document that he had when he was putting it all together, I don't think had the proper permissions, but I'd have to double check with him. But I think it was just because it was amalgamated from a bunch of different things. Um, so that and so when you copy paste, you lose that history. Maybe it should have been in Git. Any other comments there? I want to make sure we're good there before we move on. Yes, David.
I'm feeling a little odd about rewriting the doc whole cloth as well. How do we want to approach this? Would it be better to just have a chat with Ricardo and then set up a doc async? Like, I feel like we have a conflict of interest here, considering you can't have. I don't think it would be proper to have Fermion folks writing the docket, right? Um, it's just that seems a little
Yeah.
odd. Now,
That's true.
should that be input into the analysis? 110%, right? But you know that's it's part of the interaction. It's not us writing a
Yeah.
whole cloth.
That makes sense. I totally agree. That I get that. I wasn't saying I was saying I wanted to make sure we don't block anything with the sandbox review next week. And so we have people here. That was the thing I was thinking more along the lines of. And it isn't just to wasn't thinking of rewriting it directly in this doc, but more providing as hey, Wasm Working Group got together. Here's the recommendation was more what I was hoping. But you are right that maybe it'd be better to do that async and create a new document and then provide the feedback that way.
When is the next tag runtime meeting? I'm looking at the calendar.
This Thursday? No, not this Thursday. Next Thursday, probably. Yeah, next Thursday.
All right, that's a little late. I would really love to be able to do that in that setting, actually, if possible. Or at
Yeah,
least
because
to
then it can be
discuss the
with him.
analysis.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to. I think it would be proper to have Ricardo, representing his work. Like you said, I don't think there was any malice involved. It was just, hey, maybe there's some misunderstandings.
Mm-hmm. Okay, then how do we want to move forward with this? Given that information, because I don't want to block the meeting next Tuesday. I mean, I would say that seems like async doc to me.
How do folks feel about that? Better yet, objections.
James might have a comment.
Yeah, how flexible is the review next week? It seems like with the ambiguity around this document and the various recommendations that have been made, it might make sense to flush this out instead of rushing it and kind of following up later on. Like do that review not under pressure.
Am I right in that sandbox reviews are only 4 times a year? Something like that? It's not the normal TOC cadence, it's spread out a bit more.
I feel like they've changed it recently, and that might be right. So I think that's right. Let me go dig it up and just double check. But yeah, I think you're right.
Okay, might not be an option then. Just wanted to get some clarity there.
It says every 2 months. I just checked, so it's still a little bit of time. I don't want to push the delay out on that. Radu.
I don't have input on and shouldn't have input on whether it should be sync or async on obviously have a preference to being part of the TOC review next week, but I do have a thought about it. It would be very good to have a real conversation on some of the misunderstandings and some of the things that are genuinely things that we can address from the document, and whether that happens synchronously or asynchronously. I again don't have an input there, but it would be very good to have a substantive conversation about those things.
Joe, did you want to go ahead before I go? Looks like you were going to say something. Okay. Yeah, I think just in terms of speed, because like I said, I really don't want to block this. Let's start with, like, I think Radu, because if we can distill what the actual concerns are properly into the feedback doc, I think that makes the conversation then something we can have. So like that to me feels like the quickest, most open way to do this is to just get that done, like get some of that feedback loop through and kind of combine the stuff we know, like there's some good feedback or discussion points to have, and then have that discussion with you guys before like moving it any further along, and then we can make sure that all those are properly addressed or properly discussed.
Yeah, and I want to point out there's a mix of comments from Bob Killen from the CNCF on what is acceptable for Sandbox and what isn't acceptable for Sandbox in that document as comments, and comments from a bunch of people working on various projects on things that are misconstructed or inaccurate. And so it would be good to take those into account and flush things out that would require more comments. Thanks.
Yeah, Kate.
Yeah, and I think that's another good reason for not deleting this document. And, you know, this document has been put out there and those comments are being put out there. And so just to make sure that those comments stay out there, because they then can be referenced in the next doc as well.
Yeah, and to be clear, sorry, I want to be clear what I was trying to say. I'm not saying we should delete this document. I was thinking more like making sure we have one that properly represents the things, and then deleting the comment once we've done that, just so people aren't misdirected to old stuff that we don't feel like represents things properly. I think that's my concern, as I don't want people being directed to something we feel doesn't represent things properly. Not that we should delete the document. So good for calling that out, Kate. Like that's I think what I'm arguing to do is just trying to make sure that capture what we've got there, but don't redirect people to that later when they come look at the history. Okay. So I think that's what we do. David, you and I, let's get together, get the doc started, and then get all the right parties pulled in. And all the like the comment stuff, at least, like kind of put in there, even if we just start with a bulleted list and then turn it into something, like just so we can have all the stuff and burn it down. Just so, like I said, I think my first priority is having been stuck behind the slow process sometimes that was happening as they were unclogging the pipes. Like, and I understand that can be frustrating, and I do not want that to happen here. So I want to make sure we get through that quick. Okay. Related bullet point next. And let me just check one more time. Are we okay to, oh, Joe, sorry, go ahead. I just didn't see your hand.
No, I was just gonna say I have a agenda point.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
where I was moving to. Perfect. But before I move there, I just wanted to double check. Are we okay to move to the next agenda item? Any other comments or concerns before we move on to there? Yes, David.
Any chats with Ricardo, it'd probably be good to have Danielle there as well. So let's try to schedule those as appropriately as we can.
Okay. Next up, we have Joe brought up an item around formalizing interoperability criteria for the CNCF accepting Wasm Sandbox projects. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, well, this was tightly coupled to the previous point and regarding the spin and SpinKube analysis. And one of the most contentious point is vendor-specific APIs. That's like the primary concern for Spin and SpinKube. And it says it lacks interoperability. And when I first read that, I was like, I wasn't sure what kind of interoperability is the document talking about. And I also made that comment in the document. I said, hey, if we talk about interoperability, when I think about it, I think about an application that can be compiled to WebAssembly and it can be run in multiple runtimes. That's interoperability. And if a Wasm satisfies the Wasm spec test, that's a Wasm module. If a Wasm implements WASI Preview 1, that's a WASI module. If it implements WASI Preview 2, that's a WASI Preview 2 module or component. So, and anything on top of that, for example, like WASI key value is still in the draft status, and it's not officially published as part of WASI Preview 2. If a project like Spin or any Wasm platforms that use interfaces outside of WASI, should we say this project has no interoperability with other Wasm runtimes, even though that project has implemented, WASI Preview 1, WASI Preview 2, and passed the full Wasm spec tests? So I raised this point because I want to discuss as a Wasm working group here, and if we do give recommendation to the TOC for accepting sandbox project for Wasm platforms, we should have a criteria for what is acceptable interoperability criteria for those projects. And David?
Okay. So I think this is a conglomerate of issues. One of them is historical with Kubernetes. So the inclusion of different cloud providers in the Kubernetes core code base made it difficult and made it have a huge number of dependencies, and it was difficult to update those dependencies. It was pretty nasty. And so there's multiple cloud vendors and different vendor dependencies are like verboten, and for good reason in those situations. And this is something I was kind of drawing out a little bit earlier in an earlier discussion here about that previous topic. Uh, what is being done at the runtime level, I think, is slightly different, and I think we can't make the direct analogy here. And I mean, really, what we're ended up doing is we're putting a statically linked binary onto a node to run things, or maybe not even doing that at all and just running something in a container. So these things aren't. I don't think we have quite the same worries that were probably driving that comment and probably changed the way that it was perceived. So I think it's just we need some clarification.
Yeah, I mean, I know that one source was when the TOC originally looked at SpinKube, and they were looking, and I think it came from, I think it's exactly that, David, because I think they were coming from the point of view of, like, hey, there's this, um, there's all these WASM projects we have inside the CNCF, and and like this, and SpinKube seems to be doing it just for spin. I think that was their concern, if I'm summarizing the video right. And I think you're right, but I think I kind of agree with Joe that this might be something we want to do. We maybe want to dedicate part of the meeting to, is kind of like enumerate and just document, like, what does this mean? Like, where are the different interface points at? And I think we do it for everything. Like Joe was saying, we say, like, what is the thing we accept for the standards? Like, we need to, I think we all probably agree on that just as is, but like to get that down in writing of like, hey, make sure you're following like the W3C standards, and then things like you're using like the WASI preview 2 things that are in here like that. I think we have those, and then we also go through and we say, hey, just so you know, like, this means there is the ability for other people to have these like runtimes and things in there. And this is how they do it. And I think if we document that, that might be the target we go for. Because I think that's just the TOC, rightly, like you said, coming from the previous background of Kubernetes, being like, whoa there, buddy. And I don't think that's like necessarily accurate. So I think we just document it in, because I don't think we have time to do that today, but I think we maybe schedule that for the next meeting, or something like that, to maybe go through and document those things, or work on a new doc. Async is fine as well.
Yes, so I think I would say implementing more than the standard is not a compatibility issue. It's more like, I would say, SQL dialects. You have a common set you can use with every runtime. You have additions, maybe vendor specific, but with Spin, it's not even vendor specific. They are open RPs. And so I think that's fine. But the interesting question on another page is, what is the minimal set for cloud native WebAssembly runtimes that every runtime should support?
I also think for people who aren't as familiar with WASI, they may not know that these interfaces can be used by other people. So one WebAssembly runtime can create a Postgres interface, and then another one may choose to adopt that and use that. And while WASI has not defined a Postgres specific interface, because WASI has not defined a Postgres specific interface and may never do that, all these different organizations have to define their own, and they have to choose the naming for those. And sometimes a namespace of a WIT file is associated with the organization who's writing it. So I think there also was some concern with the author that the word fermion was in a lot of the WIT files in the namespace section of it, when namespace is often put for the organization, and that's something that can be renamed once submitted to the CNCF. And it's normal for sandbox projects to undergo like a rebranding and a re-adoption of a new organization upon acceptance. And that, I know for incubation, there's a higher criteria of that should all be done by that point. But I think the word proprietary also was seeing the word fermion and thinking that excluded other runtimes and providers from using that interface as well.
I assume David is finishing typing, and then he'll say his comment.
I'm sorry, I was waiting to be recognized by the chair. The part of it was the proprietary naming. The other one was the renaming for Cube, so not including Cube in the name. So again, another thing that we've discussed in SpinKube meetings specifically. Sorry, need to add that context. I think there's an issue for it too. Is there not? Yeah. So yeah, these are all good things, and we just probably need to let other people know these good things exist.
Okay, so for documenting these standards and things, I'm going to be busy trying to make sure we get the stuff done for the spin side with David. Um, Joe, are you interested in maybe creating a document and then starting to capture some of the use cases, and then we can and like linking it inside working group Wasm channel, and we can start all contributing to that. And then once we kind of have like the rough draft of ideas at a bare minimum, we can maybe schedule it in as the into the next meeting. It's ready for. Is that okay?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that, but a disclaimer, I am a maintainer of SpinKube. I don't know if there's a...
Sorry, no, that shouldn't. If this is just for the like the interoperability standards, I think
Oh,
matter
okay.
to every project because we're going to handle the spin stuff right now. I'm saying because we're handling. Okay, I'll rephrase. Starting from the beginning, because David and I are going to be trying to track down that. I'm not going to have the bandwidth to get this kind of thing started. So is that something that you can do, Joe? Because I know you were interested in talking about this, and it's okay if you don't have time. We can table it until some of us have time. But if you have time and would like to start that document and send it out to people, I think that would be wonderful. But if not, it's okay.
Yeah, I would just clarify, this is like a request to formalize something. It might take a long time, and it's not tied to the Spin and SpinKube
Yeah,
review next week.
yeah.
But happy to do that.
Okay. Any other discussion items around that? Okay. Then we'll move on to the last agenda item. This one should be relatively quick. It's one I put on there about follow-up from some action items we had last time. One of the things we had discussed some of the things we want to keep working on as a Wasm Working Group coming into this next year and being able to contribute some things back. So we had assigned out some things to get some of the different people from the different projects and stuff that we either haven't heard from in a while or haven't or would like an update from or sounded of interest. So I just wanted to follow up if we've gotten any of those. I'll start with mine. I did talk to Sean and Mendy because WebGPU sounded like one people were interested in. They're willing to do it. I haven't been able to pin them down to a date yet. The Wasm-wg folks wanted to give an update on their component model stuff, which said they'd be around March. So nailing down a date, but that should be March timeframe. There were some others from I think Calvin and David. Calvin and David. Yep, those are who it's assigned out. Did either of you have any success reaching out to them and seeing if they were willing to come in?
I haven't nailed down timing yet, but I think they're willing to do it. But yeah, I'll get back to you on it.
Okay, that's the preview 3 stuff, right?
Yeah.
Okay. David, any luck on your end at all?
I left the United States directly after our
Okay,
call last.
Well then, valid excuse.
I'm sorry, I have done nothing with regards to like work or anything, so I apologize. I'm worthless, but I will.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I figured it might happen. So I just wanted to follow up so we didn't lose the thread, so that we can make sure we can get those scheduled.
I will take it on right after this.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, that was it for that thing. We always leave some time if we can at the end for any news or updates or things from people. It was just over the holiday, so I assume there's not too much, but just in case, were there any newsworthy Wasm items people wanted to talk about? Joe, I had a question for your thing in chat. Were you saying you wanted to queue that up for next time, talking about the Go work? inside the BCA? Okay, that'd be good to hear about. For those who do not know, it has traveled along quite well, and so it's pretty exciting what's happening. So I'm excited to see that. So we'll throw that on the agenda as soon as we're done here. I'll copy paste for the next week and then do that. Awesome. Well then, with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up for today. Thanks everyone for attending. We'll be meeting again in 2 weeks like we normally do, and we'll be following up on all the items we talked about today. So thanks everyone, and have a great day.